All right, hello once again. This is Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College, and I'm going over the bootstrapped version of the St. Louis Blues Line site that I've created. I'm in part 2, and there'll probably be 3 parts in here. And what I wanted to do in this particular lesson or video is to go over and start to talk about what changes, all right, what changes we have to make or should make at least, all right, when we start to bootstrap something. All right, so when we get in here and we look at our meta tags, of course we had the char set previously, but I'd like to talk about these right here. All right, so notice we've got meta name equal viewport, content equal width equal device width, initial scale equal 1, shrink to fit equal no. That's all stuff that is being done for mobile devices. The viewport implies mobile. All right, the content equal width equal device width means make the whatever I'm using for a device, be it a phone, a tablet, a desktop, a laptop, whatever, something else, use as much of the screen width as I have possible. When it comes up, have it be at 100%. And the shrink to fit, I believe, I could be wrong on this, but I believe that has to do with being able to pinch and zoom, and we don't want to allow that to happen. Now, I'm going to actually take this, and I'm going to put this into Google. And it says, what does this particular thing do? It says, what's the difference between a page that has this in it and one that doesn't? It says, if there is no difference, I suppose I can just ignore it. All right. It says, the answer was posted several years ago in the question. And now the question really should be, should you even consider using it, etc., etc. It says, depending on what Microsoft browsers you support, you may not need to continue using this. If you need to support IE9 or IE8, I would recommend using this tag. The tag allows web authors to choose what version of Internet Explorer the page should be rendered as. IE11 made changes to these modes, and it says see the note below. All right. If you're using this tag, etc. Okay, so let's see what it says here. Here are the definitions provided by Microsoft. Edge mode tells Internet Explorer to display content in the highest mode available. All right. So what you're doing is you're telling the system, if at all possible, try to use the highest version of IE you can possibly use. Now, do you need to put this in? Well, one thing about Bootstrap is decided with version 4, they're not going to support IE8. I don't remember if it's 9 also. Let's see if we look in here. Okay, so when you take a look at what's in here, get rid of this, sorry. You'll notice that they have dropped support for IE8 and IE9. So you could make the case, all right, and say you don't even need that line anymore. But it just seems that historically that line is put in. All right. So again, the idea is you're trying to, for IE, you're trying to have this come up in the highest version possible. All right. typically what you put here in the head section are at least, for link tags, these two. The first one is the Bootstrap CSS file. So this is the CSS file that comes from Bootstrap itself. The recommendation is typically that you use the minified version. Do you have to use the minified version? Of course not. But the idea behind using the minified version as opposed to using the non-minified version is the minified version is going to load faster because it's been minified. It's a smaller file. All right? So it should load faster than if you use a non-minified version. But if for whatever reason you still want to use the non-minified version, you can. The recommendation, though, that I have read in everything that I have looked at is that if you are going to use this, you should never, ever, for any reason, go in and modify this file. If you have to make modifications, you make the modifications in this file. So in other words, this is the system file for Bootstrap. This is the user's file. All right? The other thing I want to mention is if we go down to the bottom of the file, and it's typically put down at the very bottom, you'll notice that we have 4 other files in here. The first is the minified version of jQuery. And that's the one that you should load first. Again, you've got your choice. When you use the minified version of these files, you can either copy them and use them directly, or, again, if I come up here and say cdn for bootstrap.min.css, for example, it'll give me, and you'll notice here's Cloudflare, and I don't remember if this is the one or not. Maybe, I guess it's not. I wanted to show you kind of a neat site. Multi-CDN delivery. One of these sites, of course I can't find it when I'm looking for it. What it has is all of the, so there's the CSS and the JavaScript. So this is from bootstrapcdn.com. So what I could have done is, instead of using this one, we could have used this. So I could have done a link rel equals style sheet, href equals, and then put in this file. People ask, okay, what's the advantage or disadvantage to using one as opposed to the other? The advantage of using this right here is that you have the CSS file loaded on your own system, so you do not need an internet connection to be able to test. With this one, since you're using a content delivery network, and since you're using an address that's out here, you do need the internet. That's an advantage of using this. The disadvantage is you always have to load this file, where here, the file may already have been loaded. I'm not going to tell you to use one as opposed to using the other, because again, you can make a case for doing it either way. All right? In much the same way, when we come down to the bottom here, I can either use this file, which I've loaded, or, as I just showed you, I can come in there and copy this. Whoops. I can copy this. There we go. And do it like this. All right. So I can either do it and copy it into my own folder structure, or I can do it like this. Again, I'm not going to tell you which way to use. I'm not going to tell you which one is better because you could make a case for either one. All right? In much the same way, here is jQuery. We could use a CDN for jQuery. And I know there's a lot of them. I actually like the one from W3 Schools. jQuery CDN. And there it is. So again, we could use that one. I'm not trying to waste your time by going over this. I'm just trying to show you that there are multiple ways of doing the same thing. You'll notice for this tether file that's used when you have to position things on the page, for that particular example, I did use a CDN, and I used Cloudflare's. All right? So the reason I'm telling you that is by me adding all of this stuff, all right, what I ended up doing was in my CSS folder, notice I have my own CSS file, and I have the bootstrap.min.css file. And in my JavaScript folder, I've got my own JavaScript, I've got Bootstrap min.js, and I've got the jQuery file. So I've got all of those in there. All right, and that's what you're seeing in here. Okay. I think that is probably even more introduction than we needed. I'm going to stop here. Then in the next video, I'm going to go over some of the major changes that I made in the CSS, and then finally finish up with another lecture or video that goes through the major changes that I made in the HTML. All right, and I'll be back with that in just a couple.